forget.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, so welcome all. Really awesome to see you all here. I'm glad to be here. So today we're going to be talking about using mindfulness to assemble our apothecaries. And before we do that, I'd love to, I would like to read our declaration. I know that we have some people in here who weren't here during our inaugural sermon where we actually read the declaration, so I'd like to do that again. And then I'm going to follow by going through our message, and I'll go through that. I kept adding and adding to it, so I'm going to try to get through it at a pretty good speed. So then towards the end, we're going to do a guided meditation, and then hopefully open up the floor for questions, comments, chatting, etc. So really, I'm just going to dive in, share my screen, and we'll go from there. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jordan Bernard. I am the Minister of Health for Fifth Element Free Church. In a past life, I was trained as a nurse practitioner, worked in the health and wellness field, mostly in alternative healthcare. And yeah, somehow I found myself here as a minister in a church, and I'm not exactly sure how that happened, but it's here and it's good, and I haven't really looked back, and I love what I'm doing. Give me just a second to share my screen. Okay. So I'm just going to read through this. You can read it with me and just listen along. So Fifth Element Free Church is a congregation of men, women, and children who believe in God, the Creator, the universe, etc. We recognize that there are infinite interpretations of this divine and supernatural power, and that God is too big, too powerful, and too complex for any human being to fully comprehend. As such, in the eyes of this church, all iterations of God are true, valid, and welcome. We are unified in our belief that the God of our respective understanding has created the earth realm in which we reside to be a paradise for humankind. However, humankind has been diverted far from God's divine plan. Our realm has been infiltrated by evil entities whose influences pull us further and further from God every day. We believe that God's true nature is being intentionally hidden from us. This evil has permeated every single facet of our lives here on earth: medicine, education, government, food supply, entertainment, and organized religion, to name but a few. Never has this infiltration been more apparent to us than it is now. We see it for what it is, and we do not consent to its authority. We reject it in its entirety and declare that God is supreme. We members of Fifth Element Free Church seek to return home to the God of our respective understanding, to the inherent balance of God's divine creation, and to the individual and collective sovereignty that is our birthright. This means that we must cease to give any energy whatsoever to infiltrated entities so as not to feed and contribute to the growth of the evil that is already all around us. This means, in turn, that we cannot fund, seek permissions, or entangle ourselves with any person or entity that denies our God-given sovereignty. God has placed this knowledge in the hearts of each and every member of Fifth Element Free Church. His will be done. We believe that a healthy body is the best way to foster a connection to God. We therefore deny the legitimacy of any person or entity that purports to limit our sovereignty of body. To this end, we seek only to consume pure, unadulterated food and water. We reject as ungodly all evil attempts to poison, alter, and regulate our food supply. We also believe that God created the body to heal itself, using healthy food as a first line of defense. As such, we reject much of Western medical advice, seeking instead to support the body in its natural ability to return itself to homeostasis. True freedom can only exist in a society where every man, woman, and child is the ultimate authority over the temple that houses their soul. In all matters on behalf of ourselves and our children, we declare a divine right to retain bodily autonomy. That is God's will for us, and we will not defy it. We believe that an open and malleable mind is the best way to foster connection to God. We therefore reject as evil all attempts to prevent our members from exercising their freedom of speech, thought, and expression. To this end, we seek to educate our congregation without unwelcome influence or interference. We do not subscribe to any one-size-fits-all education model, and we firmly believe that evil forces try to keep our minds small and caged from a young age. Small minds do not notice their chains. They labor for and are fed the very evil that enslaves them. We reject this evil. We deny its authority. We do not consent to its presence, nor its alleged dominion over our lives. We do not believe in misinformation. We do not believe in one objective truth. God gives us all the divine right to obtain, process, and subscribe to information however we see fit. In all matters, on behalf of ourselves and our children, we retain sovereignty of mind. That is God's will for us, and we will not defy it. We believe that a contented heart is the best way to foster a connection to God. We therefore deny the authority of any person or entity that takes any measures aimed at limiting, curtailing, or putting conditions upon our ability to seek happiness and fulfillment. To this end, we seek to promote the use of all jobs, services, and modalities, traditional or not, that boost our emotional and spiritual bodies. We believe that God created us in his image, meaning that each and every one of us has the power of God within. Cultivating this personal power is the only sure way to live a godly life, and we therefore reject as evil any person or entity that purports to limit our ability to do so. We labor in service of God and God alone. Any task, no matter how big or small, that is done with a joyful heart is done in service of the God of our respective understanding. We believe that the pursuit of personal happiness is the birthright of all souls who choose to take a human form, and we demand the ability to pursue that happiness without interference from any evil, infiltrated people, or entities. In all matters, on behalf of ourselves and our children, we retain the complete dominion over our daily affairs. That is God's will for us, and we will not defy it. So I read that just to get us back grounded into why we come here week after week, and really why we're doing what we're doing and making the decisions that we make each and every day. So, discussing decentralization and community resilience is one of my big passions. And it's even more potent when the topic is health related, as it is today. And I was really excited to give this message because I just feel like using mindfulness and assembling our resources in a decentralized manner and in a way that empowers each and every one of us is one of the best ways that we can really move forward into this new world. So I'm going to just kind of go right into my message and get through that the best that I can, and then we will move into a guided meditation that I've prepared for us. Okay, so we've each been granted a vessel in which we experience this life through. And unfortunately, there is an evil that continues to assert control through centralization and subterfuge. When we become aware of this, we get to choose differently. And we realize that caring for our vessel is the ultimate form of disregard to the current systems, thus neglecting to give any power to this evil. So you might be asking, why do we start with an apothecary, or what even is an apothecary? And in simple terms, an apothecary is a collection of resources, usually medicinal in nature. It typically consists of herbs, spices, and other remedies that are used to promote healing and to counter dis-ease in the body. So I imagine that traditional apothecaries were a place where people would come, gather, they would purchase or trade for materials. But this was also in a time where homes most likely had a more robust knowledge and a larger toolkit of supplies to treat both simple and complex health issues. But in today's world, where we rely on pharmaceuticals and centralized resources and other medical treatments that are controlled by gatekeepers, building an apothecary can be a really powerful way to assert interest over our own bodies. But I want to preface that this message is not just about gathering as many different herb supplements or resources as possible. It's about doing so mindfully and with intention. And why, you might ask? Because I believe that trusting our intuition and being guided by our deep internal knowing is how we effectively move through this current world that is burning to the ground without getting burned ourselves. So this is not about prepping. It's about knowing your needs and the needs of your family. It's about connecting to that knowing voice inside of you and taking action out of trust in something greater than ourselves, not out of fear of what might occur. So I'd like to actually get really tactical first and share steps on what you can do to start or continue building up your health-related resources or your apothecary. And then we'll move into the meditation where we can actually integrate that information by quieting ourselves and connecting back into ourselves and into the infinite wisdom of our consciousness. So the first key principle for me, this is all my opinion, but the first key principle of building an apothecary is connecting with nature. So this is often the most beneficial way to explore, one, the connection with yourself, the connection with your outer world, but then also to connect with any items or materials that are asking to be included in a personal apothecary that want, like nature items that want to be brought into the home to heal us. I suspect that most of us already know that being out in nature actually grounds us. It reduces stress, it reduces anxiety, and it allows us to flow into this really powerful meditative state when we spend consistent time outside intentionally. I often find that new medicinal plant, I often find new plants when I spend consistent time outside and I notice my surroundings and notice what's changing in my surroundings. And so if I notice that one particular plant keeps popping up, or that I'm particularly interested in one of them, then that kind of gives me a red flag of saying to myself, like, oh, I need to do more research, I need to look into this and consider adding it to my toolkit. And honestly, we don't have to go far into the wilderness to connect to nature. So spending any type of time outdoors, either growing your own herbs or your plants, that's a great way to establish a connection and amplify the benefits of both nature and medicinals. And this is going to really create a powerful foundation for our overall health and well-being, which is also an excellent transition into my next principle, besides connecting with nature, is utilizing food as medicine. So we've all kind of heard the phrase, food is medicine, medicine is food. And I fully believe that. Like, it really starts at that foundational level. The food that we eat plays a really crucial role in our overall health and well-being. And by choosing nutrient-dense foods, whole foods that avoid processed and inflammatory products, we can help to prevent illness and support our body's natural healing ability. And when we incorporate herbs and spices into our meals, we can provide additional benefits even above and beyond just the foods that we're eating. And also, knowing where your food comes from and choosing nutrient-rich foods that nourish us is a great way to reduce the overall amount of medicinals that you will actually need to have on hand at any given time. So we can reduce the number of things that we would have in our toolkit if we have a great foundation with our food and what we're eating. And on top of that, by building relationships with others who are growing food, we can really decentralize our food supply, which is not really the topic of today, but I do believe that it's equally important. So if you've not grown your own food before, I kind of created a list of some of the easiest to grow foods that can be started in containers outside, or foods that can even be grown inside under a grow light. So really anyone can grow these foods, and this list of food really provides a great foundation on, you can add these to your meals every single day. And this is going to, I don't want to say replace medicine, but it really provides that foundation. So hopefully over time you would need less and less in your apothecary. So the first thing is leafy greens, like lettuce, spinach, kale, any of those dark leafy greens. They're easy to grow. They're packed with nutrients. They have vitamin C, iron, folate. What I like about these is you can grow them inside or outside, and they actually prefer to grow in colder weather. And so since we have a long cold season, these are great options for us in this area of the country. Tomatoes are also great. Tomatoes need heat, so they're more of a hot food. They grow in the heat, but they're also a great source of vitamin C. And what I like with tomatoes is they're easy to preserve. You can can them, you can dry them, you can freeze them, and they go with a lot of different meals. Radishes are also great. So radishes are, a root vegetable. What I like about radishes is they grow really quick. So radishes were a great vegetable for me to start with my son, who's now 7. But back when he was like 5, radishes were great because they were, short attention span. They grew quickly and it was fun to watch. Cucumbers are great. What I like about cucumbers is they grow great in containers or in hanging baskets. They're a good source of vitamin K and potassium. And again, relatively easy to preserve if you have the supplies and the materials. Green beans are also great. Those are another one that can be grown vertically in containers. So if you don't have a lot of space, they are a good option to be grown on, a porch or something like that. And the green beans are actually really fun for kids to pick. So they're a good one to do as a family, and the kids stay engaged with their foods. Carrots are another one. So a root vegetable. You can grow them in containers or right in the ground. What I like about carrots is they will store well. So in some type of cool cellar, garage. I know some people who even store them in the ground over winter. They just really mulch really heavily and put like the greenhouse plastic over in some type of cover over the carrots, and then when you need carrots, you just go out and pull them out. I haven't done that, but I know that it can be done. So I think carrots are a really great option for this region. Other things that are good to grow: peppers, bell peppers, chili peppers, any type of peppers. You can grow those in hanging baskets or containers. Herbs, any type of herb can be grown inside or outside. So I like to have herbs kind of going throughout the year. Strawberries, we did strawberries. I personally did strawberries last year, and that was an experience. What I like about strawberries is in this area, they're perennials. So if you can put them in the ground, then they'll continue to grow year after year. And then microgreens. Microgreens are something that I have personally inside. So that's what I kind of use throughout the winter months. I have the microgreens growing. Popular varieties of microgreens that I found and that I like are broccoli, kale, and radish. So that's kind of a brief list of some foods that you can start. And this is kind of the foundation of your apothecary, whether you just continue to eat them throughout the year, or if you choose to grow some and then preserve them to be used and parceled out throughout the year. So once we've kind of addressed food, then it's time to actually look at the resources in your personal apothecary. And I kind of broke this down into steps. This is how my mind works, and this is how I addressed kind of building up my health resources over the last 3 or so years, when I really was thinking about a time in my life when, oh, hey, I might not be able to go to the hospital for certain reasons. I was really, my mom and my family and I really thought about, okay, what are the resources that we really actually need if going to the hospital is not an option? And so this is kind of out of all of that brainstorming and discussions. So the first thing you want to do is start by taking an inventory of what health issues you're currently experiencing. So you may have that, at the top of mind, and you may, have a list of, okay, I'm experiencing these 3 things, or it might be something that you actually need to sit with yourself and really connect in and listen to your body and see and feel into what's actually going on in your body. Because if you're like me, a lot of times we get really busy and we just kind of ignore what's going on. So taking some time, sit down with yourself and really be able to put on paper what you are actually experiencing. So for me, I'll just share a little bit about what I'm experiencing just as an illustration, but I am experiencing migraines currently and low energy in the afternoons. Those are my 2 kind of experiences that I'm going through at the moment. So as I took inventory of that, I thought about, and the next question is, what resources are you already utilizing? So go through and actually make a list. Are you taking supplements? Are you using powders? Are you taking prescriptions? What resources do you already have in your toolkit that you're already using and getting from other areas, like supplement companies, pharmacies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Teas are included on this. Teas are like medicinal teas are a resource on here. So think about all of the things that you're already utilizing. And then ask yourself, what injuries or what health related issues have you historically experienced? Because sometimes what we've experienced in the past can come back around in a secular nature. So that'll just kind of give you a roadmap of, what do I need to be prepared for that I'm not currently experiencing, but may come up in the future? And so I'd like to be prepared for it, whether you're prone to certain injuries, or if you've actually had health issues. So for me, I've experienced a lot with adrenal fatigue, adrenal issues. So I like to have things on hand that can help me with that, because that does seem to be cyclical in my life. I have periods where I feel really good, and then I have periods where I struggle a little bit. Next up to think about is children and families. So do you have children? What do they need? Go through kind of the same exercise with each of them, as well as any member of your larger family or your community that if you have a tight-knit community or a tight-knit family and you want to sit down and do this together, I think that's a great option, a great idea to really get on the same page and understand people's needs and what they're struggling with. And then consider experimenting with different preparations. So you may not realize that they're the power of medicinal teas. So do some research if that resonates with you. There's powders, there's tinctures, there's salves, and just find out what works best for you and your family. So for me, I am really resonating with tinctures right now, and that hasn't always been the case in my life. I've typically been a supplement taker. That's been kind of easy for me. It's easy to carry around, easy to utilize. But right now, supplements are not calling to me, and tinctures really are. But for my son, who's 7, tinctures are not really palatable for him. So I try to do more of a powder or a dropper in, if I can put it in his water or smoothie or something like that. That's what is working for us. And then the next thing, once you've taken stock of all of that, is there an opportunity to find a preparation that is closer to nature? So like I shared with my example on the supplements, like if you're taking a supplement in capsule form, can you find something similar that's in a powder or in a tincture? And I bring this up because as we commit to disregarding the evil that's infiltrated our society, it's really important that we're able to access all of the resources we need without going through a gatekeeper. So what do we do if we can't get that supplement? Well, we need to have something that we've at least thought about as kind of a backup. And that's the same with pharmaceuticals. At any point in time, that supply could be cut off in a way. And as we move closer to nature and we're committed to, finding preparations that are closer and closer to nature and more available to us, the supply chain really shortens and it naturally becomes decentralized, because now I don't have to go online and order my supplement from Amazon.com. I can, I've done my research and I can go forage in the woods and I can create the tincture that has the same result for me. And that's a much safer place to be. And then just keep in mind that each herb, each preparation, each material that we use has a different energetic makeup. And it's really important to understand how they affect your body, mind, and your soul. So one question that you can ask is like, when I take this, does it bring me closer to myself, or do I feel more separated? And so for me, I'll just share briefly. So I, said I have migraines. So I'm experiencing migraines right now at this point in my life. And sometimes I take a tincture, and sometimes I take like an actual pharmaceutical. So I have like a prescribed medication that helps with my migraines. And I can tell you that when I take the prescription, I completely feel disembodied. It completely separates me from myself. And I know that. And so when I take it, I just know, okay, I'm going to feel separated from myself for a while. I'm willing to do that because the pain is so bad and I just need to get through this. Versus sometimes I choose to take a tincture and I, take my ghost pipe or something, which is not a pipe, it's an actual tincture. But I take ghost pipe and it helps with pain related to migraines and lots of other things. And that actually brings me more embodied into myself. Doesn't necessarily always make the pain go away, but it gets me closer to myself so I can really embrace the pain if I'm willing to do that and look at the pain and sit with the pain. And so it just depends on what day it is, what the mood is, what I have going on, but I'm aware. And that's how we really mindfully build up our resources and know what's available to us and how we want to proceed through our health issues or our health journey. And then once you've done all of that and you figured out what your needs are, what you have, what you need, et cetera, I like to go ahead and take that one step forward and think about what is it that I have easy and abundant access to? What's in my area? what can I get easily? Because that's part of paying it forward and being able to support the greater community. So once you take care of your own needs, your family's needs, then we start looking at the community needs. So for an example from myself, I have an abundant access to violets. They grow in my yard. It's awesome. They're everywhere. And so I always harvest extra. I'll make extra violet tincture, or I'll let my community members know, like in my area, if you guys want to come by and harvest your own violet, because it's during, a certain season of the year, please come by and harvest what you need, because there's really more than enough. Same with burdock. So we have burdock that grows out in our garden. And so I pull that up. And last year I just kept pulling up burdock, pulling up burdock, pulling up burdock. And I was like, oh, I don't need all of this burdock. And so I was able to gift it to other people. And honestly, it wasn't extra work for me. It wasn't, it was out of a place of abundance. It was easy for me to get, and I had abundant access to. So I just went ahead and gathered those resources so I could share them and move it and pay it forward with my community. Another unique place that I'm in, and I can probably speak for my mom and I are in, is that we can get access to certain medical supplies. And so we've been very mindful when we have that opportunity, we go ahead and get those supplies, and we're just kind of holding them for the greater community. And these would be more for like acute care issues. And so because we realize that not everyone has easy access to those types of supplies. And so when we have the opportunity, we just go ahead and grab them up so that we can share them if the need arises. Okay, so once we figure out what's going on, what resources we need, et cetera, let's talk about how we can really sit down and understand our own needs. And I am going to share with you guys like what's in my personal apothecary, but I'll do that kind of towards the end. So a couple of strategies that we can take, and none of this is going to be earth-shattering new information, but a few strategies that we can take in understanding our body's needs is to really just sit down, listen, pay attention to ourselves, what's actually going on, the energies moving through our bodies, any pain that we're having or aches, et cetera, and also paying attention to how different foods and remedies make us feel. Just like I mentioned with the sumatriptan, the prescription medication, and the ghost pipe, like how do I feel when taking one versus the other? Do I feel energized and clear-headed? Do I feel sluggish or irritable, et cetera, et cetera? If you like to, keep a journal, this is a great thing to keep a journal on, is how you feel after taking certain remedies or certain medications or eating certain foods. That can be a really helpful tool in just understanding your body's needs. And over time, you might notice some patterns that can really help guide you in making different choices in moving forward. And then another suggestion would be spending time meditating, whether that's, formal meditation where you're sitting down, or if it's walking out in nature, et cetera, whatever resonates with you, just spending time meditating, because it just allows you to really sit down and listen to your body and get clear on what's really going on, instead of constantly being busy and going from one task to another, in which the body and the symptoms are kind of getting pushed aside. And I'll just remind you that it's really important to recognize that my body is different than yours, and what I need is different than what you might need, and everyone is different. And so it's really important to listen to your own body over, the newest social media craze or the newest supplement craze. Sometimes those things can be really helpful, but at the end of the day, if your body is telling you one thing, I'd really encourage you to honor that over what the rest of the world says you should be doing. And I think a lot of us are in that process, and we understand that, but I just want to encourage you, even on the health journey, it's okay to do something that's a little different if your body's kind of pushing you in that direction. And, be curious. That's been one of the biggest lessons for me to learn, because I'm very much a book smart, follow the protocol. This is what I was taught. And as I've had my own health experiences and my own awareness just through my spiritual growth, I've realized that I really need to confront life with this air of curiosity and questioning rather than judgment and shame, and thinking that, you know, well, this isn't working for me, so it means XYZ. It's bad or it's whatever. So I just really encourage you to experiment, be self-aware, and be really curious about the process and the journey that's going to make it. I hope that will cause less struggle and suffering. And don't be afraid to try something new. And remember that, or I have to remind myself that health really is a state of being, and healing is a process that oftentimes takes time and patience. And it's a learning. We're constantly learning from our bodies. My final 2 points before we kind of go into the specifics, and I kind of touched on these before, but I think it's worth noting again, is as we continue to build up our own apothecary, one, sharing out of abundance rather than lack. So I don't want everyone to go out and share with their communities because they feel like they should or they have to out of a commitment. I want you to be able to share because you genuinely have more abundance in your life, in your toolkit, in your resources. And I don't know that a lot of us have ever really experienced that in our lives. I know that I haven't. I've always been sharing because I feel like I should, because it's the right thing to do, even if I didn't necessarily have the resources to share. And I think we need to get into the practice of sharing out of abundance, not from lack. And then also the vital role of being able to receive from others and be gifted from others, because I know that for me, it's a really special thing when I can gift someone something that I've made or grown or found, and I thought of them and I wanted to gift them something. And so being able to receive those gifts from others is a way of, one, building your apothecary, but two, also really building those close community relationships that we really need in this time. I'm trying to think of what else. So I just encourage you, find whatever resources are abundant, stockpile some extras to share, and then receive with an open heart. I know that I've had a couple of friends specifically who over the last year have really gifted me with certain tinctures. And what's interesting is they show up at the perfect time that I've needed them. And it was a very much a spiritual exchange where they, you know, had these tinctures, they had extra, and they got an intuitive hit that said, oh, I think like you should give this to Jordan. And then they would gift it to me and it would be exactly what I needed at that time. So I think it's a really beautiful way to build community and build relationships. So with that, I'll share just a couple of things that I keep personally in my apothecary, just to give you some ideas. So a lot of what I have is for my child. So I have kind of his little kit or area of the kit. And so he's 7. We travel a lot. We're in the car. We're away from home a lot. And so I make sure to have homeopathic remedies and essential oils because those are small and easy to carry. They're not a big thing. They're very, very tiny. And I really focus on injuries. So cuts, bruises, scrapes, and bug bites. So he's very allergic to any type of bug bite. And so I try to make sure to have remedies on hand, because if I can get to it really quickly, then I don't have to move to the over-the-counter meds. I can just kind of prevent it from the very beginning. And then I ensure that I'm amply supplied with salves for sunburns or wounds. And then I also keep nutritionally dense powders on hand for when times get really busy and we aren't eating from the garden as often when we're out and about. And so I try to keep those powders on hand just to help boost his nutrition. Let me get some water. Okay. And then for me personally, I carry remedies that help process emotions as they come up. So I have Ignatia is one of them. Aconite is another one that I usually keep on hand. And then also essential oils that I find very grounding. So if I feel like I'm out and about and I'm having trouble grounding into my environment and my experience, then I have a certain essential oil that I really like that I oftentimes will actually wear out in nature, so that, if I'm in the middle of the city and I'm feeling kind of out of body, I can put that on and it kind of brings me right back in. Smells have an interesting way of like bringing you back to past experiences. So I use it in a positive light. And then I keep tinctures that support adrenal health and anemia because, as I mentioned, I've experienced dis-ease in those areas previously. And then for my community, I keep ozonated ointments for skin issues and infections. And we use DMSO, which is kind of an alternative health product or a resource, because it's one, really versatile. We can do a lot of different things with it. And it has a very low price point. So it's very cost effective. And then, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we've stockpiled resources for acute injuries like lacerations, more significant illnesses, sprains, fractures, those types of things, which, knock on wood, we haven't really had to pull out yet, but we do have those on hand because we're just trying to think forward. So, kind of wrapping up, building an apothecary is not just about creating a collection. It's not about prepping. It's not about having access to every single resource you can possibly have. It's not about recreating an Amazon warehouse. It's about building a relationship with both yourself and others, and using that connection and those connections to embolden how you relate with yourself and the God of your respective understanding. And by assembling a home apothecary and caring for ourselves and our families and our communities, we are essentially taking responsibility and decreasing or completely disregarding the need to utilize all of these systems that we know are infiltrated by evil that we don't want to feed and we don't want to interact with. So that is why I 100% believe in what we're doing and believe that we genuinely can, I don't want to say break away from the systems completely, because there are some good, but we can break away to the point that we want to. Like, we have control over that. And that can be really empowering when you feel like you don't have to 100% rely on something that is in complete misalignment with you. I don't believe that we need to completely do everything ourselves. Like, it takes that community. But there's a difference between relying on the community that you align with and relying on something that you don't align with. So with that, I know that this was very informationally driven and very much like head space and thinking. So what I'd like to do is actually balance that out by offering a meditation next. And so let's just spend the next few